Hi, it's Mr. Bennett. In this video, what we need to talk about is we need to talk about the metric system. Now, the reason why we need to talk about the metric system is, well, to be honest, most of the world uses it. On this picture, you can see the countries in green are countries that use a metric system, and then the countries in pink are countries that use something else. So here you can see the United States, Liberia, and Burma. Those are the only three countries in the world that don't use the metric system. And so the reason why you need to understand the metric system is if you go anywhere outside the United States, Canada, Mexico, Europe, whatever, and start talking about pounds, inches, and feet, people there aren't really going to know what you're talking about. They're going to understand when you're talking about kilograms and centimeters and meters and so forth that way. And so that's one of the reasons why we need to understand the metric system, is most of the world honestly uses it. Now, the metric system is actually pretty simple. It's just we Americans were not all that familiar with it. And so we think it's complex, but it's really pretty simple. First thing to keep in mind with the metric system is in the metric system, each type of measurement has a base unit that it starts out with. So the three we're going to talk about in this class is we're going to talk about the base unit for volume, mass, and length. The base unit for volume is liter. The base unit for mass is gram, and the base unit for length is meter. Now, what we mean by base unit is, let's talk about length, for instance. If you're talking about any type of length in the metric system, the word meter is going to be in there somewhere. If you're talking about kilometer, if you're talking about centimeter, or if you're talking about something really small and we're talking about millimeters, okay? So notice that whenever you're talking about length in the metric system, the word meter is in there somewhere. This is not how the English system that America uses works, because in the English system, we can talk about inches, feet, yards, miles. There's a different measurement in every one of them. But when you're talking about the metric system, this base unit is going to be used. So anytime you're talking about length, meter is going to be in the word. Anytime you're talking about mass, gram is going to be in the word somewhere. And anytime you're talking about volume, liter is going to be there in some way, shape, or form. So that's the first thing to keep in mind about the metric system, is that it has a base unit, which is the foundation for the type of measurement we're going to be using. And we use that base unit for different sizes. So why is it that so many of the world's countries use the metric system? Why is it so much popular than what we use here in America? Well, the number one reason why the metric system is more popular than what we use here in America is the metric system is all based on units of 10, okay? Real quick, how many yards are there in 3 miles? Can you do that in your head? Good luck, okay? Because 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. So if you want to figure out how many yards there are in 3 miles, you need to be able to do 3 times 1,760 yards in your head. Now, maybe your math teachers can do that, but your average person can't really. On the flip side, if I ask you how many meters are in 3 kilometers, well, that's easy, because 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. And so if I ask you how many meters there are in 3 kilometers, that's simple. 3 times 1,000, 3,000. Real simple, easy to do. And so that's the reason why, the metric system is more popular, is because it's based on conversions of 10. You think about the English system, there's 12 inches in a foot, there's 3 feet to a yard, and then there's 1,760 yards to a mile. That makes it really hard to do conversions between the different types. Other reason why it is more popular than the system we use here in America is because we're only ever dealing with 1 unit. For every physical quantity, we only got 1 unit. So let's talk about volume for a second. Here in the American system, we have cups, we have pints, we have quarts, we got gallons. And remembering how many cups are in a pint, how many pints are in a quart, blah, 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 makes it really tough to do. But when you're in the metric system, we're only dealing with liters. And so you don't have as many different types of quantities that you have to remember. And so that's an important thing, and one of the reasons why the metric system is more commonly used than what we use here in America, because there's only 1 base unit. All right, next thing you need to know about the metric system is conversion. And the metric system is easy because we use prefixes. And we use prefixes and attach them to our base unit to get an idea of what we're talking about. Example, this is half a liter. This is half a liter right here. Now, if we're going to describe how much water is in a swimming pool, we're not going to want to use liters, because that's going to be a really, really big number. We want to use something that's much larger. Or, for instance, another example, this is a meter. If you're going to try and describe how far it is from here to Salt Lake City, you don't want to do it in meters. You want a much larger unit of measurement so your numbers don't get so big. So that's where the prefixes come in, that we have our base unit and then we attach a prefix to it to either make that base unit larger or smaller. And the prefixes that are used in the metric system is there's lots of them. We're only going to use, I'm only going to test you on 6 of them. And honestly, there's only 3 that are commonly used very often. And that's going to be kilo, centi, and milli. Now, what you need to understand is what these mean. That if you see kilo in front of something, think that's the same as multiplying by 1,000. So a kilometer is 1,000 meters because I told you that kilo is the same as timesing by 1,000. So kilometer is 1,000 meters in it because that's what the prefix kilo means. If you have a hectometer, that's 100 meters. If you have a decameter, that's 10 meters. That's what you're looking at. So you can think of each of these prefixes as timesing, or if you're talking about these guys down here, here we're dividing because now we're talking about these prefixes are going to make it smaller than your base unit. And so if we're talking about a decimeter is going to be 1/10 of a meter. If we're talking about a centimeter, that's going to be 1/100th of a meter. And if we're talking about a millimeter, that's 1/1000th. So here we got a metric ruler right here. Each one of these numbers is right there, that's a centimeter. So there's 100 centimeters in a meter, and then each one of these little notches down here, that's going to be your millimeters, and there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter, and 1,000 millimeters in a meter. And so that's one of the ways that we can convert quickly between different size of units in the metric system is because it's all based on 10. All right, so conversion in the metric system, real easy. So here we got our boxes representing our different prefixes. So out here is going to be kilo. Out here is going to be hecto. This is going to be deca. This is going to be deci. This is going to be centi. And this is going to be milli. Okay? How this works when we're converting in the metric system is, let's say we have 1 meter. If we're converting to something that's a smaller unit, all we got to do is we got to move the decimal point. So if we have 1.0 meters, if we want to talk about decimeters, we move the decimal point 1 point, and there are 10 decimeters in 1 meter. If we want to convert it to centimeters, we move the decimal point 1 more time, and now we have 100. And then if we want to talk about milliliters, we move it 1 more time, and we now have 1,000. So there are 10 decimeters in a meter, there are 100 centimeters in a meter, and 1,000 milliliters in a meter. And if we want to convert, all we got to do is move the decimal point back and forth. Now, if we're talking about things that are larger, then what we're going to do is we're going to move the decimal point to the left. So if we got 1 meter and we talk about how many meters there are on a decimeter, then we're going to move the decimal point 1 point. And there are 0.1 meters in a decameter, sorry. And then if we want to convert it 1 more time to hectometers, we move the decimal point 1 more time. Now there's 0.01 meters in a hectometer. And then if we want to go to kilometer, we do it 1 more time, and there's 0.001 meters in a kilometer. Now we can go the other direction. Let's say we have 10 kilometers. If we're going to convert that to hectometer, there's 100 hectometers in 10 kilometers. There's 1,000 decameters in 10 kilometers, and there's 10,000 meters in 10 kilometers. And that just comes from moving the decimal point left and right. So you can think about it as moving the decimal point, or you can think about it as timesing by 10 or dividing by 10. Whichever makes more sense in your head, you need to be able to convert between the different units in the metric system. So if I tell you, like for instance, how many milliliters are in 7 liters, you need to be able to do that. You will get questions like that on your test where you have to convert between different units within the metric system. So you really got to understand these prefixes, kilo, hecto, deca, deci, centi, and milli, and how to convert between them. So the metric system is all about measurements, and when we're talking about measurements in science, we need to understand what tools we're going to use to do those measurements. So a quick overview, if you're not familiar, for the types of tools we're going to be using, that if we're ever going to be doing something with mass or weight, our weight, we're going to use a scale or a balance. That's another way of saying a scale is what we're going to use to measure that. If we're talking about length or distance, we're going to be using a ruler, a meter stick, a tape, or a tape measure. We did that in class when we measured the width of the class. If we're going to talk about time, we're going to use a stopwatch. Now, time is a one metric system thing that is not based in 10. The second, the minute, and the hour are official units in the metric system, but they're not based on 10. That's just a little quirk there. If we're talking about temperature, we're going to use the Celsius thermometer. In science, we almost always use Celsius because, once again, it's based on 10. If we're talking about volume of something, we're going to use a ruler or a graduated cylinder to get that done. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the metric system. Hopefully you've seen that before, but understand your objective for this is you got to be able to convert between different units in the metric system.